All right, let's get going. So, Craig, can you tell a little about the audience, the Audit Tuesday, who you are, what you are, and why you agreed to do this?
Sure. So I'm Craig Guiansso. I'm the Senior Director for Technology and Cybersecurity at Alector. We're a company in South San Francisco, specializes in neurodegenerative disease, trying to find drugs that can help with that. Longtime user of YouAttest and thought this was a very interesting topic and sort of cutting edge. So that's why I'm actually doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and to be honest, Craig and I have been working together. He's used his UATest and he gives great insights. And my friend David, give me a little background about
Hello.
yourself, especially around identity and IAMs.
Sure, some of you may remember me as a tech reporter back when, and that's when I was first really exposed to identity, when over 20 years ago, some folks were speaking about the need for more interoperability and decentralized identity. I ended up being hands-on keyboard, working with AD, ERP systems, worked for an IDP, and now I'm doing some cloud security consulting, mostly focused on identity and everything that touches, which is everything.
Yeah, no, and I do like to ping ideas about IAM and where direction of identity off of David, so we have a good rapport. I met him at a wonderful company when I was over at Jump Cloud, which is a great IDP, and we have support for that as well. Okay, so I'm going to start it off a little different. I'm going to start it off with, because look it up. Everyone's always on the web and checking out things. Look up shared, shared signals. Come up with some pretty advanced stuff on, like I said, CAEP, risk, and SSF. Okay, but let's put this all in context. I've been around identity for a while, so I go all the way back to AD and LDAP, right? And before there was first AD and LDAP, and X500, directories and all that. And then what happened is SSO happened. SSO through products like I was at one of the first SEs over at a company called Integrity. It was great. And we taught people that you could take one site and get SSO into other sites. And it was really good. But what the genius is in Integrity, and I worked directly with people like Mark Shanlio, were promoting, is that what we can do is you can assign on from this enterprise, and then you can get a single sign on into another product enterprise. And that was Federation. That was kind of blew everyone's mind. And we
Yeah.
went around, did installs on something called S2ML. I had a wonderful t-shirt that said S2ML and all that. Anyways, that got handed over to the Oasis group, and that became SAML. Okay. And that was the first Federation protocol. It was fantastic. Okay. And as we know, and then SAML beget other things like OpenID and OAuth and all that kind of stuff. But that was how we got into this concept that if we work together as a group of identity people, we can pass identity and identity information. So I'm going to hand it to you, David, for a second. You worked over at Jump Cloud. They're pretty forward-thinking identity. So they use identity passing, not just as apps, but to devices as well, right?
Correct. They were very forward thinking in pairing those two. You could bind a device through its admin portal and keep your local user account or take it over. I can't speak to its roadmap today as far as its capacity to map the context of a device or identity to any type of policy engine, but Okta, Microsoft are doing quite a bit of nice work there.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm saying is this stuff that we're talking about, it's really is being driven by the IAM players. And if you look up shared signals and Okta and Azure AD, I'm sorry, Entra AD, my friends Microsoft in Seattle, they're really doing good work in that space. But and we got Craig on to start, and he's going to help us talk about what's in reality, as basically a cyber expert and compliance expert at his company. You're using, Okta and AD and Entra AD at the enterprise today, right? With single sign-on?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So this is real world. Now what we're going to be talking about is how do we provide more, more information, into these, right? So David, being an IAM guy, you work with the protocols, the Kerberos, the SAMLs, the OAuths, and all that, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny you say Kerberos. I encountered a startup the other day that has Kerberos as a service for Android devices. So I guess what's old is new again. But yeah, SAML, OAuths, OpenID extension. Occasionally, you still see WS Fed out there.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is about most of these, and this is where I was going to go with this. These are about passing identity and a signature on the identity, saying you should really trust this identity. And watch where I go with that concept of trust, guys. Because to me, and I was an authentication guy. I got like 12 patents in an authentication. And I had a great talk with Peter Shavakar the other week on his podcast. And where I was saying, well, that's just the first A of the AAA trilogy, guys. There's audit and authorization. And right now, I'm not going to put you too much in the spot in this, but those protocols, the Kerberos, the SAMLs, the OAuths, they don't really help much, David, right? On information once you get past the identity and authorization and that.
Yeah, traditionally, authorization's been done on the relying party side. We are starting to see, as you alluded to, the IDPs taking the lead there, though. With continuous access evaluation, there's been more policies either through conditional access or having more configurable assertion lifetimes on tokens to really be able to terminate sessions quicker than 1 hour. So there's been some advancement there.
Yeah. So, and Craig, in your world, that is your world. I mean, you get a single sign-on platform and you're passing the identity, and then the authorization is really up to each application
That's right.
on its own, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So the protocols, what I'm trying to paint y'all out there is, yeah, if you get CAEP and risk enough, you get that you're ready to, but I'm trying to paint why we're doing this. Because why we're doing this is we're authenticating user, and then with this wonderful identity goes across the ether, and we're supposed to say, all right, it's that you're
Yep.
on your own. This is G Grayjack. I'm pretty sure it's G Grayjack. There's no concept of how much I should trust this user. There's no weight of the trust. It's just an identity.
Yep.
So when I started talking shared signal with people, and they were like, well, I don't understand. I'm using SAML. I'm using OpenID. I'm like, yeah, you're only getting the first A. And so, Craig, in your world, you're protecting the keys of the kingdom of the entire company of, your IP, the PHI, the
Yep.
PII, and all that. So we probably got to go a little deeper. Okay. So this is where we start getting into shared signals. That is the concept that we should be taking more information, and we're able to take in more information, and that will assist in the ability of our resources to process. There's Mike Kaiser, who I'll throw out things, did this one. He did a great hour on shared signals, and he gave a story. He's that kind of guy. He's from Austin, so Austin people are more eclectic. I was once eclectic. I lived down there. Now I'm in SoCal. I'm just a jerk like everyone else. So, but in Austin, it's good to have a story. His story is shared signals. He said there was a village down in South America, Brazil or whatever, right? Somewhere around there. Anyways, and the dolphins would swim to the shore, and they would let the fisher people know when the school of fish were there. Why the hell would they do that? Well, the dolphins figured out if they signaled the fishermen, they would scamper and get on their boats, go get their nets out, and leave a lot of fish left over. Okay. And they would be easy to eat and all that kind of stuff. So it was a shared signal from the dolphins to the fishermen who'd come out, and then both parties would benefit. And I think with that, we can kick it off and start saying, we can start using shared signal. And I'll start with a real simple one. Craig, I have to ask you, and I know that to ask you prior, but LinkedIn Live was fighting me. So do you use our triggers in
Yes,
the thing? Okay.
extensively.
So
Yep.
talk a little about that. Talk about what you're doing with, you got one resource that sends a trigger, and then this product called
Yep.
YouAttest does something else, and then we'll slap Kashif on the side of the head, and he'll run the demo for us.
Yeah, sure. So I have a couple of really good use cases for triggers. The first is a SOX, the SOX implication. So we have a couple of groups in Okta, and this would apply to Active Directory also, that are in scope for SOX. It's our service accounts that have I hate to say domain admin, but admin privileges, as well as our Okta admins, and so those groups are monitored with YouAttest, and when anyone gets added, the concern is adding, but we also monitor deleting. Anytime there's any activity in that group, we get a trigger, and then allows us to look at what that actual change was, but it also kicks off an attestation so that whoever is responsible for that group or the person gets an attestation, and they have to attest um, that change, if you will, is correct, and they have to make sure we have to ensure that there's a change ticket for SOX. The other good use case that we have that sort of came out organically, didn't really see this one coming, was those same kind of groups we use for monitoring access to our clinical trials. And that's very, very restrictive. We can't like that has to be monitored extensively. And so we use triggers for that. So anytime there's a change to that group, someone gets added to it, we get a notification. That notification goes to, or that the following attestation of that goes to the owner of that group, to not only notify them, but to, have them sign an attestation that the access is appropriate.
Perfect. Perfect. Kashif, why don't you take it away and show in the real world what that actually looks like?
Absolutely. And let me know when you have the visual, please.
You look great.
Yeah.
Well done.
There you go. So here's what Craig was talking about. So we specifically if we go into Okta integration, it will give you these triggers where you can apply these conditions to design those triggers. For example, in the drop down, you have those group events that Craig was talking about. So once you select the group events, it will let you decide what do you want to see when some changes are made to the group, whether it's a user is being added or a user is being removed from either a specific group that you can mention over here that you need to continuously monitor all the time, or you can leave it blank and it will cover all the groups that are part of your Okta or part of your Entra ID or your Jump Cloud or any IAM that you're using, any IDP, and it will fetch those changes for you. And it doesn't end there. It will not only fetch the changes, or it will not only notify you about those changes, it will also create an audit out of that change. And just as Greg said, as soon as the change happens inside a group, it creates an audit out of that, and you can assign it to a manager or to an Okta group or an Entra ID group or a user for that matter, and that audit will be assigned to that person as soon as that change it hits that change within that environment. And to add on top of that, there is a second layer where, in addition to sending this audit to a manager, you can also send an email alert to an Okta group or to an Entra ID group just to notify them in case this manager has not seen the notification of this audit. You can add another layer so that somebody from that particular group that you're involving in the process would see the notification and would be on alert. And to add a third layer, you can have, the admin can add himself to these email alerts whenever this change happens. In addition to these two, he can receive the email notification, and instead of letting it go fell through the cracks or something, he will be the third layer on top of these two, and make sure that this doesn't go away unnoticed. So yeah, so once this happens, you will see the changes, you will see the audit pop up appear in under event audits as a direct result of these conditions, these triggers, and then you can assign those to relevant people, or you can say, well, I approve or disapprove or certify or revoke this change, and you can stop it right there before it can harm or cause any damage.
So as you were telling me, right, in this things, Okta is behaving as the porpoises, right? And then YouAttest becomes the fisherman. Right, Kasha?
Yes, absolutely right. I'm sorry, I was looking at another screen, so yeah,
No, that's okay.
yeah,
I just had to have fun. It's a
Yep.
great analogy. Like I said, Mike Kaiser is really good at
Yep.
this shared signal stuff. Look him up, listen to his stuff. It's really good. But what you're all wondering is, all right, but I'm also told that we should be looking at zero trust. Okay? And I really like the CISA's model for maturity model. Okay, when they're the best. This is my humble opinion of actually saying to the world, hey, we know we want to go to zero trust. We know the concept that we should have real-time events communicated to our processes, whatever. But how do we get there? So what they said is, here's y'all. Everyone's at traditional right now, except for Craig, who's running YouAttest, and I'll show you a little further. Okay, but he's at traditional because traditional is, hey, I'm doing ad hoc processes with spreadsheets and blah, 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 right? Whereas the initial is that we start automation, okay? And what's really interesting, and remember the concept of shared signals there, Advance talks about that the processes talking to each other. How the heck do we start talking to each other if we don't have signals? And optimal is when we're really there. Okay. We don't put anything in our system that isn't communicating with the others. And just FYI, there's 5 pillars in the CISA model. We're focused on the identity in this webinar, and that's what YouAttest is about. So that's what I focus on. And this is how I broke it out. Traditional is how most are working today. Ad hoc processes, not coordinated, not automated. First step, initial step is get something like YouAttest in there where you automate your access reviews. Advanced is when we start adding intelligence and things like the triggers. And then optimal is when I have all the processes work together. Remember, and this is my rant for today's on a Tuesday, is if someone's saying to you, my product is optimal for you for zero trust, they don't know what they're talking about. Optimal is that his product working with someone else's product, working with someone else's product. Your environment becomes optimal. Okay, that was fun. I like to rant about zero trust and all that. So, let's keep this going. So, in your world, Craig, what we're doing with the triggers, now you
Yep.
have, a better, alert of not only governance, but real identity security in your environment with the triggers, right?
Correct.
And just to throw out a real world, example, guys, that's what happened over at MGM and Caesars,
Yep.
right? And I'm going to pick on the IAM vendor because what it means is someone attacked the IAM vendor and then changed policies and rules and permissions. Literally, what they did is create another IDP and shoot the agent, the AD
Yep.
agent, to their own IDP, which is unbelievably scary. That's where you need governance. That's where you need, this advanced state of zero trust, where a shared signal, hence the word, from the resource goes to another resource, another product like YouAttest, and you leverage it that way.
Yep.
Okay, good deal. Let me okay, I got that. Okay, but and let me go further on the concept of shared signals. And this is where the protocols start coming in and all that type of stuff. Um, Before I go into that, David, I'm throwing this spot a little. Why don't you tell people a little what risk is, and then we can start talking about some of the things that are in that protocol.
Sure. Well, risk is the chance of an adverse event happening and the impact it would have.
Right, right. And they have and it's very identity based of, what is the identity, who has touched it, what has got touched, when it was managed, etc. And it's a way to, pass that around. Okay?
Sure. And we're seeing more non-human identities as well because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. And this is where my brain, and just if you're following along with the acronym bingo, risk is supposed to be a protocol which exists, and it exists, and you can talk about your
Oh,
identity.
that risk protocol.
Oh,
Okay.
that
I
risk.
was thinking of something
I'm
totally
sorry, I
different.
put you on the
So
spot.
going back to the Google stuff that was done years ago
Yes,
and ended,
yes.
okay. Ooh, egg on my face.
No, no, they're fine. That's fine. That's me just throwing stuff out there. Talk a little about the Google's risk.
Sure. Well, if we go back to the zero trust model, a lot of what we see is just the tip of the iceberg, and risk takes a much more holistic view of what's going on between the people and resources and everything behind the scenes. But that's really been folded into some of the work that's being done by the open group and so forth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the way it was explained to me is you got risk from Google. Well, I don't even like to say that now. It's, it's open. And then there is CAEP, CAP, which is supposed to be events, a continuous authentication events protocol. And then what we're doing is the river that these flow on will be the OpenID SSF, when we start passing these around. And what I was looking for, and I haven't seen, I mean, I think what we need in this CAEP is things like, there are some that exist, but like, multiple failed logons, recent privilege escalations, anomalous access, stuff like that. So we can start passing events to Craig in a better way. And that's where I look at it. That would be the value to me of shared signals. And if rather than just as we started this call off, Craig, rather than us sending just trustee Greyjack, you had some context of this user should be trusted because they have this type of trust score. They haven't failed login. They have been trusted here and here and here. That's where I'm kind of going. And let me just try to turn that into a question. Would that have value is if not only you got the G Greyjack, but you also got some type of trust score on that thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would actually have even more value for maybe outside accounts or outside people as opposed to interior,
I like that.
employees or non-employees. To me, that would be very beneficial. It's almost like the global entry or trusted traveler,
Yeah.
very much like the trusted traveler program.
Yeah, and I like where you took it because I do see that's where if we really do this phase of identity right, and we start bringing in the different this was another webinar I was listening to as Mike Shane Shane Mile and Mike Kaiser go back and forth, and they said, well, the concept there is going to be no, silver bullet in authorization. It's us, taking information, which I think the industry has done a good job so far of talking about like device security. Okay.
Yep.
Which I'm good. It's important, but I think it's only one part of it. I mean, you can have a secure device and someone can, basically phish your ID and,
Yeah.
back browser you and all that kind of stuff. And your device is wonderful, but you are now, owned. And that identity that you're passing around is crap. So I don't think we're done with device security as the CISA pillar shows. So yeah, and I do believe that the shared signal, I think nothing could be better than the shared signal being used in the supply chain, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, our friends at China are now flying around a mock F-35. I think they laughingly called like the F-30 or something, just for the sake of it, after stealing all the plans.
Yep.
So, anyways, the point of is that's where we're at. We're at where we have concepts of trust. We have concept of what is events, and then we're looking at things like the SSF capacities. And I'm gonna put you on the spot, David,
Uh-oh.
to talk a little about IAMs and what they're doing on SSF. Like Okta, et
Sure.
cetera.
Well, if we you said Okta, I'll start with Microsoft because it
Okay,
is
go with
really
Microsoft.
doing a fabulous job there. So it's taking all of that telemetry from the device in the context of the user. And if you have P2, it's always P2, there's identity protection involved. So that's pulling information from the dark web and what maybe some user behavior may be contributing to all of this. But that risk profile that's created can be used in many, many ways through conditional access all the way through more granular access to certain applications, using Defender for Cloud Apps, essentially to say, risky users shouldn't access this resource or something should happen, such as they're prompted to prove they are who they say they are through MFA. So there's a lot of nice things being done there. Obviously, Okta doesn't have its own MDM services, but it is especially relying on these frameworks and protocols to be able to really take in that telemetry for access decisions. And really, it's doing something very similar to Microsoft Identity Protection there.
Got it. Got it.
It's really
Why
the
don't you
telemetry is being extended in a standardized way.
Yeah, no, I like the words. That's what it is. So that's the concept, like that there's information that the dolphins want to pass to the shore, right? And how do we make it available? Talk a little about OpenID IPSSIE. That is the insurance presentation and storage for identity ecosystem framework.
Sure. So in some ways, it might be one IDP sort of saying to another, trust this user, but don't trust that guy too much.
Nice. No, and let's pause on that, David. That's really what we're talking about. That was the money shot right there. Put you on the spot, and thanks for the shot score. You
Yeah,
just
there's a verifiable credential typically in what we're seeing now, such as a digital ID card, and the user presents it somehow, maybe from some sort of digital wallet. It gets validated. So it sort of streamlines that process, and you don't always need to rely on the issuer of that credential either.
Yeah, no, but I like what you said. Trust this user, but this much. Because we only have this much confidence right now in the user, right? And that's why we started um this webinar, not just with the feedback from the different browsers, but we started this webinar talking about SAML and OpenID and all that was what they lack. And that's why we need things like IPSIE, right? To give us more context of the user. And with that, I will shamelessly plug the YouAttest Identity Trust Score as an example of this type of information. Okay, so this is something that we have GA in our product. Our customers like Craig can deploy this. It's available. We have it in the IAMs themselves, where it pulls information from the IAM and then comes up with an identity trust score based on various factors. Okay. Um, Basically, there's an AI model that goes in there. It says, is this user over entitled? How is he know he's over entitled? You look at the other users and you say, hold it, if you're a sales guy, none of the other sales guys have Amazon, rights to the to the servers. Okay. so that you see that. But we also, put in things like heuristic stuff like SOD, segregation of duties. If you have violations in there, that's pretty good sign that either that's a malicious or an overprivileged insider doing privilege escalation. And then the secret sauce is, which no one else has, is what about the information that's coming from your practices, your user access reviews? That should be fed into the model and into the score. And that's exactly what we have. And then Kashif will do one more quick demo and show that that's what's in the product. It's an identity trust score that can be used as a shared signal into your resources to help you understand, as David Worthington just said, and I love it, how much you should actually have confidence and trust this user in the application.
And the beautiful thing is that it sort of overcomes some of the challenges of RBAC, especially when you have roles. Craig and I were discussing this the other day. Your organization may have the role of a nurse, but then there could be 9 different types of nurses. So having that level of human oversight workflow combined with this telemetry is really beautiful.
I like it. I like it. Craig, any thoughts before Kashif does his magic?
Yeah, I mean, I could see how this could be extremely beneficial. At a previous place, we had, about 60,000 customers worldwide. It was, and we would have literally, to David's point, nurses that would, and for that matter, doctors that would log into our systems and order product for different organizations that they worked for, and being able to, pull all that information and get a good idea of the security around that user would have been really beneficial for us.
Perfect. Kashif with
Was that
Cricket
my
Wicket.
cue?
Yes, with
All right.
Cricket Wicket in hand. Tee off.
There you go. Don't talk about cricket, please. It's so
I
disappointing.
lived in
Anyways,
Singapore for a while. I would watch with just bafflement.
Is that
uh,
some type of baseball or something?
kinda. Yeah. With worse people playing it. Uh, all right. So on the screen, this is what Garrett was talking about, the identity risk matrix. So we have initially we have put in 3 parameters or 3 risk factors, starting with last reviewed user that was last reviewed within YouAttest, with any segregation of duty violation, and the third one is the group anomaly. By the way, we can always keep throwing in multiple other risk factors other than these 3, right? It's just to show we can do this. We can create this matrix based on multiple parameters that are there, for example, in Okta or in Entra ID or in any IDP. So these 2, for example, last reviewed on, you can set a benchmark. Let's say after 30 days or 45 days, if any user has not been reviewed for more than 45 days, it becomes a high risk or a medium risk user for that company. And that's what this matrix represents in this first case. The second one is the segregation of duty violation. So for example, you are creating an audit for finance group or finance application. But before doing that, you go to the segregation of duty rules and you set up a rule that anyone from sales or marketing, if any person from these 2 departments is part of the finance application, when I create this audit and pull the information from finance application, flag those users. Why? Because those users from marketing and sales, they don't belong in account receivables, or they don't belong in finance as a whole. So those users will be flagged into your audit, and then you will have a way to escalate it to or assign it to somebody to take a look and take care of those anomalies. The third one is coming directly from your IAM. If it's Entra, if it's Okta, if it's Jump Cloud, it's showing you why a user is anomalous in a group, because this user or a certain user has more privileges or permissions as compared to the rest of the group members. That's why it's anomalous. It's at a high risk. Why he has so much privileges as compared to the other members of the same group. And when you expand upon those highlights, it shows you where the anomaly exists and how you can remove or remediate. For example, in this case, if you click on a high risk user, it shows you that, the reason is because the user is exhibiting deviation of greater than 70, 80, 90% compared to the users within the same group based on assigned applications. So the remedy would be to just take away access of this particular user from, of these applications, multiple applications that he has access to, which other group members don't. So once you do that, you will bring the risk level down to low or no risk at all. So that's something you can flag, and this is what YouAttest is about. It's working. It keeps working on these to make them better, make them improved, so that you can even create an audit out of these high risk users in near future.
Perfect. Perfect. And basically what you showed is a shared signal that can be passed into other applications for, as David was saying, more granular
Yes,
authorization, which I really liked. All
exactly.
right, guys, we got through it, all that kind of stuff. Any final thoughts you want to have, David? And I'll let Craig go, and then I'll say goodbye to the world.
Sure. I'm thinking back to our banter back and forth at a great point that Craig made about how we apply policy to external identities. And I'll give a shout out to Mark Simos at Microsoft in the Open Group and the wonderful work they're doing. We talk about IAM. They are thinking IAAM. And what is the A? It's the extra A, adaptive access
Yeah.
management. So basically, they're also looking at digital identities from external organizations and the need to apply identities to everything. Um, they're even think of integrating key and certificate management. But this is something where I really think about where YouAttest sits based on this
Right. Yeah.
conversation of adding a new trusted phase that
Yes.
sits between authn and authz, the authenticated or allowed, using those common attributes. And there's a lot of change coming here, especially with non-human identities, so that all objects can be tracked and processed by a policy engine. Basically, you can't restrict access to a certain app if the app doesn't have some type of managed identity. So there's a lot of great stuff looking on there and elements that have often been overlooked. Um, and as well as the inverse there, more granular application consent management for the user. So it's really a win-win overall.
No, I really like that. I
It
really
all
like
comes
that.
down to shared signals.
Yeah, it really did. And what you're saying is, and you're assuming that what the Microsoft proposing is, hey, we have auth, and then we have authorization, and then the in middle state, and there is trust, and what we're going to do with that.
In
And
fewer words, yeah.
yeah, there you go. All good, Craig. Take it away.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting, field now, especially with AI and the tools that we're going to start seeing for, bots that AI can work on. I will say that as this whole thing matures, I think they're going to have to make it very consumable and easy to implement, because as most companies don't even have a good sense on who has access to what. And so to add another layer on top of this, could add a whole separate
I
piece
really
of
like that you took
confusion.
that, Craig, because that's really what I got when I was listening to the really advanced stuff on CAP and risk and SSF, and I'm like, guys, a lot of companies don't have an SSO down, you
No,
know?
right? We're talking about, trusting an identity, and most companies don't even have a good idea of who those identities are and what level of access they
Right.
do have.
Or a bunch of one-off integrations, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm a bit of a holdout. Like we're still talking about zero trust. Well, what the hell exactly is zero trust? And
well,
have we ever seen it
that's why
perfectly
I get
implemented?
so mad at the vendors going with their own definitions of zero trust, and I always bring up the CISA. because they're like, hey, it's a journey. You're not going to get optimal. No product you're going to buy is optimal. Let's start by automating your processes and then
Yeah.
moving up the Himalayas there.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
all.
And for the
Um,
IDPs, they're winning out as well with SSF and IPSI, providing a more scalable way to get these things done. It makes life easier for them too.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's a good
and
point.
I would like to say is you don't have to do a shared signal. You don't we don't have to wait on the protocols. That's why we started this call with what you're using already. You're using a shared signal of the dolphin being octed, telling the shore that hey, some permission has changed.
Long
And
live
that's,
Flipper.
yeah, there you go. Let's give it. And that
We
works.
have APIs.
And that's an important, I've been playing with webhooks and all that. That's what we got working in our product already and all that. So we're ready. We're eager for the IPSIs. We're eager for CAP. We're eager for SSF and, SSE if customers want to go that way. We're also ready to work with you on your webhooks or any other way to patch this shared signal. With that, I'm going to show my technical prowess, which I'm kidding. Just show a little screen here. That's how we can be reached, and I can, if you reach us, I can get a hold of David and Craig as well. But feel sure, how to be reached, Craig and David, and we'll sign off.
Thank you.
All the best. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.